Hi, this is Sean Stone welcoming you to the Free Zone here on Buzzsaw.
Central Intelligence Agency.
It was described by witnesses as...
Freeman Fly is joining us today. He's the creator and host of Freeman TV, and actually that's the longest running. He has the longest running YouTube series going back to 2005, and he's an expert on all things occult, esoteric, especially focusing on Illuminati mind control, ancient civilizations, and Illuminati and Masonic symbolism. So my first question for you, Freeman, has to be: how does one become expert in these categories, such as the occult and trauma-based mind control and ancient civilizations?
I'd have to say it was a bit easier before the internet to be the classified expert on these topics. The world has opened, you know. This whole world of the occult has now risen to the surface, and now there's numerous people that would claim to be the experts on these type of signs, symbols, and things that are going on. I came up through this finding out that my father was involved. He was actually a worshipful master in the Freemasons and was chasing flying saucers for Project Blue Book. And by the time I was born, he was building nukes for Martin Marietta. And so when I found my familial relationship to all of this, I had to dig deeper. I've met and befriended numerous Masons, magicians, and even High Priest Church of Satan to try and get to the heart of what seems to be at the heart of civilization, which is this magic, this occult esoteric arts that runs beneath everything that we see as normal.
Very true. Well, now, in the case of your father, at what age were you when you realized that he was a Mason, and did, for example, that influence your own interest into these areas, or did you have a natural proclivity towards them before you even knew this?
I absolutely did. I was digging deep into Eric von Daniken and all of the Time Life Weird series and everything that you could on UFOs and abductions and all of that from the time I was about 10 years old. It wasn't until I got to college and I was studying interdisciplinary studies and philosophy. Really, this was Club of Rome's production for the new college students. But I befriended a friend there that was actually a magician who practiced the art of magic, studied Aleister Crowley and all of these sorts of things, and he had a fabulous magician's dictionary or library. And he started showing me some of these things. And when I saw the Masonic signs and symbols that were shown in his books, I recognized them immediately. And I looked to it, I said, wait, I know this stuff. I recognize this. And it dawned on me that my father's cufflinks were Masonic compass and square symbolism. And he says to me, well, your dad's a Mason. And I was like, no, he's not. I don't think he has anything to do with any sort of magical order or anything of this nature. But I went and questioned him. And sure enough, yeah, he was a long time, all the way back into Bavaria, where he began. I mean, my dad's from California, my mother's from Bavaria, and my father was in Kaiserslautern, where he was raised to be a master Mason and the worshipful master of the lodge. And he actually stole my mom from the grand potentate of Freemasonry in Bavaria, and had to leave the order at that time because you're actually not allowed to marry another worshipful master's wife, even if they're divorced. So this was some of the storyline I started to learn about my parents and how they got together. My mother was also involved. She was Eastern Star, and she played the role of Esther in their rituals where they all sit on a pentagram. Now, this is your mom's and your you know, this was very normal sort of situation for the people around me anyway. So it wasn't.
You never saw that. You didn't see that yourself.
No.
You never saw that,
no.
Those kind of rituals.
No. Although my mom, strangely enough, was raised by a witch. My past history is pretty crazy. So dad chasing flying saucers, building nukes, and then mom, she was actually abused by the Catholics in a Catholic home and saved by the Nazis from Catholic abuse, and then shipped off to France to be raised by this witch because my grandfather was an ardent anti-Naziist that had to live in the woods and hide from the Nazis at all times. And my mother was then raised in France by this witch who would go out and do rituals under the full moonlight, crossing herself and casting these spells. And my mom did show me some of what that is like. And this woman that she was raised by was renowned. People would come from all over Europe to have her heal them or heal their cows and things. And, you know, so that was the family life that I knew nothing about.
Right, exactly. That was kept hidden from you. And then when you approached your father about it, he was more candid and open in telling you.
He had never mentioned it until that point, until I learned about it. And that is one of the main points of Freemasonry, is that you must come of your own free will and accord. And I really believe this is part of the spiritual barrier that these secret societies have to get through, that you have to give your own soul to them. You cannot be recruited. And so being true to that, he never once mentioned it to me, not once. But once I learned, then I started to dig. And I've studied every Masonic ritual I could get my hands on. I've decoded their secret coded books. I've read and been to every Mason temple around the world. Been to grand lodges all over. And you can see all that on freemantv.com. I have images from inside all of these Mason lodges from around the world.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of, you know, what your father opened up and revealed to you, did you have these discussions based on your research and go back and kind of sound them off him to see if it resonated to him, or did he open up and tell you things, for example, that maybe he would not have told you unless you were interested? I'm trying to just understand, like, if he really divulged these things about for example, his interest in the UFOs and the occult to you.
No, he thought I was crazy. You know? And I'm like, really, you know? Me and him never got along, so we didn't have a real close relationship. And when he told me about UFOs, like, he said that he was stationed on a South Sea island and he had 4 radar dishes, and that he was part of Project Blue Book, and that he would sit at these radar dishes, and whenever a flying saucer flew over, he was the one that would report it and record it. And I said to him, at this, I guess, young age of 17, 18, I was like, so flying saucers are real? And he says, yeah, absolutely, they're real. And I never got anything more out of him. And I had scheduled a talk to interview him for my television show on Austin Access, way back in the day, back in 2005. And he died the day I was supposed to interview him. Wow. And that was strange to me. You know, I read into some conspiracy theory there. I'm not sure, but yeah. Well,
yeah, it sounds like some of those mobsters like Johnny Roselli dying right before being, you know, going before congressional committees to testify. But when you say he thought you were crazy, was that kind of the official term? Because, you know, if your mother is raised by a white witch or a witch of some kind, that sounds pretty crazy to a lot of people too.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think, you know, I was dumbfounded by the reaction myself, because I was reading straight from their books. But this is another truth about Freemasonry, is that most Masons don't study the occult side of Freemasonry or the esoteric arts. It's rare that you'll find a Mason that actually read Morals and Dogma, and even more rare, someone who understood what Albert Pike meant in Morals and Dogma. So I had gone above and beyond my dad's own study. Like most Masons, my dad had joined to rise through the ranks. And so if you want to rise in the military, which my dad was career military, being both Navy and Air Force, he was actually on the first killer submarine with Jimmy Carter. Now, I have pictures if you want to, you know. So this
was that where Carter says he saw the UFO as well? Was that his sighting?
I've often wondered this, you know, because they were on the submarines together, and most of the first UFO sightings were actually USOs, or submerged unidentified objects. Mm-hmm. So when you look into the first UFO, it's actually coming out of the ocean.
Well, to this day, I understand a lot of the reports, if not the majority of the reports, are actually from water-based, as you say, submerging objects.
Right, exactly. So I don't know, but I do know that my dad was on killer submarine with Jimmy Carter, and then chasing flying saucers, and then building nukes.
So in terms of the obviously, as you said, I agree with you. A lot of the occult side of Masonry does go over the heads of many Masons because it requires a personal journey and a personal curiosity, let's say, to look into that realm. You see, the history of Masonry is very much mysterious because aside from it being formally acknowledged in the 18th century in England, right, well, 1717 or around that time, there's the history of the Rosicrucians, and then there's obviously the more mystical side going back to so-called ancient Egypt, right? Hiram Abiff, the builder, King Solomon. So what is your understanding of the relationship of modern Masonry to ancient Egypt?
Well, it is curious because most of what you'll see inside of a Masonic lodge is Judaism. You'll see Star of David, Star of Solomon. You will see, of course, Solomon's temple is what every Mason temple is based on. So most of the symbolism that you will see inside of a Masonic lodge is actually Jewish. But they also always have a lodge dedicated to Akhenaten in every Grand Lodge, like the Grand Lodge in New York, the Grand Lodge of Philadelphia, Australia, London. They all have a room dedicated to Akhenaten. Now, Akhenaten is one that has really shocked me as a study when I start to look into these origins of the secret societies. Because as you mentioned, the Rosicrucians, I picked up a little book called Unto Thee I Grant, written by the Rosicrucians. And the first page I start reading, I realized that it was Akhenaten that they claim founded the Rosicrucian order. Now, this got deeper and weirder and stranger all along the way the more I looked into this. Now, I don't know if I'm sliding over to Akhenaten or if you want to stay on the origins of Masonry.
Well, we could talk about Akhenaten because obviously this is an Egyptian pharaoh we're speaking of who is known historically as being the founder of monotheism, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Because before that, there were multiple Egyptian deities, and he's the first one to promote basically a cult around one god.
The sun, yeah, the Aten.
Solar worship.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, that led Sigmund Freud to believe that Akhenaten was actually Moses. Mm-hmm. So this made another curious connection to Akhenaten. Now, from one who has studied this for a lifetime, I really thought Akhenaten was a household name. And I quickly learned that most people aren't up on their Egyptian history. So I kind of had to start to formulate an understanding of what people understood of Akhenaten because, yeah, he was hidden. He was known as the renegade pharaoh because he did exactly what you said. He turned the Egyptian religion on its head and turned it into a monotheism. And now everyone was to worship the sun instead of the multitude, the nine, as the gods of Egypt were known, the Ennead, mm-hmm. and to worship the single god, the Aten. And this is where Akhenaten, his name comes in. Before this, he was known as Amenhotep. But Akhenaten came forward and moved the capital from Thebes to Amarna. He flipped the religion on his head, and he was titled as the renegade pharaoh. Now, most people know his son, King Tut, because King Tut was so famous, right? The finding of King Tut's tomb was astounding to the world to find all these gold relics and solid gold objects placed into this tomb. But the tomb of Akhenaten itself had seemed to be lost in mystery. And in 1907, the tomb known as Kings Valley 55, or the KV 55 tomb, was found in 1907. But the thing was that all of the markers and descriptions on the tomb had been desecrated, removed, scratched away, and then the tomb resealed. So it was found by Theodore Davis and his group with Howard Carter, and they busted into this tomb without much care, without taking any delicate notes. They had a couple of artists with them and still didn't take good enough notes on what they were finding or showing what they saw as cartouches on the front as they tore down walls and started to dig into this mummy in the King's Valley, or this tomb. So they did find many pieces inside this tomb that were from the Amarna period. So they knew that they had found something related to Akhenaten. They even found Queen T's toilet and canopic jars of Merita Ten, his daughter, his mother, things of this nature. But the mummy that they found inside of this, they could not decide if it was male or female. So there were actually a number of mummies found inside the KV-55, and one was called the younger lady, the other the elder lady, and then this mysterious mummy that they believed was Akhenaten, but they could not prove. So they actually studied his body there at the tomb, and the first doctor declared, no, this is a woman. The hips are way too wide, and the mummy appears to us to be a woman. So then the parts were shipped off to, I believe, France, and they were studied again. And this doctor returned saying, no, this mummy is a male, right? So from 1907 until 2009, this remained a mystery. Who was this mummy inside of the KV-55 tomb, and why had all of his markings been desecrated and destroyed so that no one could tell who it was? Wow. It wasn't until Zahi Hawass came along to unveil who Akhenaten really was, and that mummy inside of the KV-55 tomb was actually Akhenaten.
And Hawass was the director of remind me of the Egyptian Giza Plateau, right? I mean, in terms of, I'm not sure the exact title, but he basically was overseeing the pyramids on behalf of the Egyptian government.
He was the secretary of the Giza Plateau. He's the one that showed both Barack Obama and Beyonce around the pyramids. We do have a picture there of the tomb of Osiris, which I think actually kind of put Zahi on the map, because this is an even greater mystery, and why they would announce that they found the tomb of a god is quite strange. But the tomb of Osiris...
When was this discovery, the tomb of Osiris?
The tomb of Osiris, I believe, was 1996. Mm-hmm. And it came out on television. It was an ABC mystery, I think, and Zahi went down. And the thing of it is that this tomb is so deep in the earth that there's no way that we understand how they dug down to build this tomb. Mm. The tomb itself was completely submerged in water, and once they cleared it all out, they found this sarcophagus in there without any mummy or any golden laid, just an empty, like what you would find in the king's chamber of the pyramid, an empty sarcophagus down there, mm-hmm. or an empty hole. But yet surrounded by 4 obelisks. And then they quickly announced that this, and you can watch Zahi Hawass himself on my video, announce that they had found the tomb of Osiris. Now Osiris is one of those 9 gods that Akhenaten did away with.
Right.
So now they're announcing that they found the tomb of a god.
But they don't have any proof that there was nothing inside the tomb, you're saying? It was just a tomb.
I don't even know why they called it that, to be honest with you, why they announced that it was they have now named it the Osiris Shaft, mm-hmm. which is a curious note because of its phallic reference. If you realize that the Washington Monument or Cleopatra's Needle or all these obelisks that you see around are actually representations of Osiris's phallus, his lost penis, the missing piece after he was cut into 14 parts. This is the reason these obelisks stand, is in reference to Osiris's penis. Mm-hmm. So it has a very close connection to all of how this could be. But Zahi Hawass was also the man who was involved with the attempt at capping the Great Pyramid with gold for Y2K. He's been around for a long time, and he was just recently fired for taking bribes and sexual favors, granting.
Wasn't he fired right after the revolution of 2009, late in 2009, 2010, the so-called, the revolution in Egypt? Wasn't he fired just thereafter?
Yes. Yes.
And that was just after they finally announced that they had Akhenaten's body.
Well, that was the thing. Here has been a mystery since 1907. And out of the blue, Zahi Hawass, in his grandiose style, known as the Indiana Jones of Egypt, came out on the Discovery Channel and announced that they had Akhenaten's mummy and that they had the DNA of Akhenaten. Now, here's the curious part, is that first, they would not allow any of the mummies to go out of Egypt to be studied. And only when the Discovery Channel paid for $5 million to create a DNA lab in the basement of the Cairo Museum, did they finally start to do these studies on King Tut, Akhenaten, Queen T, and the rest of the family. But I watched the archaeological forums as this was going on because, like I say, since 1907, no one has ever confirmed that the KV-55 mummy was actually Akhenaten. But when you watch this Discovery Channel show, you see them hold up the DNA markers, and you can see clearly on it, it says KV-55 on the DNA markers, and they announce that they have the father of King Tut.
That's
Now,
Akhenaten.
Yes. Now, Akhenaten, as I said, was the founder of the Rosicrucian order. He was this renegade pharaoh, and I was going to get to a different point about Akhenaten in connection to all of this. Well, all right, let's get to the skinny. The Akhenaten is the grand poobah of these esoteric orders. When you dig out The Secret Destiny of America, written by 33rd degree Freemason Manly P. Hall, chapter 2 of The Secret Destiny of America is Akhenaten, the man born 1,000 years too soon. And if anyone they could bring back, it would be Akhenaten. Now let's talk about the possibility. Now we have a $5 million DNA lab built in the basement of the Cairo Museum. We've got crazy Zahi Hawass in charge of all of this. Now Zahi, he has always been a staunch opponent to the concept of high civilizations in the ancient past. Certainly does not believe in Atlantis. And he would say that slaves would drag these blocks and mortar up to, or well, there was no mortar, blocks of stone up to build the pyramids using nothing but ropes and trees, right?
Right, exactly.
But yet, Zahi was paid to be in the position that he was in by a research group known as the Association of Research and Enlightenment. Now, this is a group founded by the study of Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. Now, Edgar Cayce is the go-to guy for Atlantis. He started channeling, he would channel while he slept, and he was able to read into people's bodies all across the world. He didn't even have to be in the vicinity. And he could tell you exactly, he could diagnose exactly what illness you were suffering from. But in his studies of doing this, and he was a hardcore Christian, he started to receive all of these communications from people's past lives in Atlantis. And these are all databased at the Association of Research and Enlightenment.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that that is the group that paid Zahi Hawass's University of Pennsylvania degree to become this lead archaeologist in the Giza Plateau. And Zahi, to this day, gives lectures at the ARE, and yet stands there and says that he doesn't believe in any ancient civilizations or the possibility of
This was also the guy that, when wasn't it, Cayce had talked about basically a hall of records, right, being accessible underneath either the Sphinx's paw or in that vicinity. And
Exactly.
Wasn't Hawass the one that once they actually did find some evidence of a chamber or a new potential hall of records, that they immediately closed off access to any researcher or archaeologist to actually go and endeavor further?
He absolutely was the one that squashed all of that. We started to see electrical conduits put inside of the pyramids. We had that little robot going on and in there with the cameras, and whatever happened to all that, right? It just got squashed.
It was he basically is a front man. He's a cover. Whatever he's saying is probably disinformation that's designed to keep serious thinkers and researchers from going and accessing and trying to find out the real mystery behind the pyramids and the Sphinx.
Exactly.
So in the case of Akhenaten, you've proposed the idea of a clone that came out the same year, or was revealed to the world the same year that they confirmed his body in 2009, Obama.
Well, here's the thing. As you start to look into the study of cloning, and human cloning especially, the first bioethics council that came together was the Hastings Center, the Hastings Institute, looking into bioethics of human cloning. And strangely enough, their first forewarning of human cloning was to say, you might understand us geneticist cloners creating skin or maybe even a finger or an organ. But are you prepared for the return of Amenhotep? And that is a paraphrase of what the Hastings Institute had to say about human cloning. Now, let's show this news article from the New York Times. This is 1985. It was written up in the prestigious magazine Nature, and also, of course, made it to the New York Times to state that in 1985, they cloned the DNA of a mummy from the period of Akhenaten. Now, this is not to say that they brought this mummy to life, but in 1985, they absolutely proved that they could clone cells from a mummy.
And that's
now,
part
see
of the,
this.
That's part of the whole reasoning behind mummification, right? To preserve those cells so that you can mummify. The mummification allows you to then clone it as opposed to decay. Most bodies will decay it by this point, 3,000, 4,000 years later.
Exactly. We have not understood the how to clone or how to mummify a body at this time. The Russians mummified Lenin and Stalin. Both of them are rotting. They have no idea how the ancient Egyptians did this. And yet, yes, a time capsule from 3,500 years ago can be brought right forward and cloned and brought to life. So I knew about this back in the early 90s and started to think about this. I've been talking about it since the very first time I ever had a TV show on Austin Access, and was then dumbfounded when I started to think that perhaps my thoughts were coming true. Now, everything I'm going to present to you is fact. It's just a matter of how you want to put these facts together, whether or not you're ready to accept what the truth of the situation looks like. Because cloning is not that difficult. The very first clone or cellular transfer was done in 1951 with an amphibian using handcrafted tools and a hair from a baby to split the cell in half, right? So this is how easy cloning can be. Now we have it's moving so much forward, and you know the heights of technology. So that's 1951. By the time Dolly was cloned, cloning was really already old news. They were cloning cows long before Dolly was cloned, and Dolly was cloned for the idea of trying to create animals that would produce pharmaceuticals in their milk. And they were trying to find ways, just as they are now creating glow-in-the-dark pigs and glow-in-the-dark cats. They were trying to find ways to create pharmaceutical animals that would produce, you know. So Ian Wilmot, who cloned Dolly at Roslin Institute, really didn't think anything of it. They actually didn't even keep the mother sheep. It was just some random cell that they had in their freezer, and he cloned Dolly, not thinking that he was going to end up on the cover of Time or any of that. So cloning itself is not that complicated of a scientific procedure. It really isn't. It's a matter of having small enough tools and a good enough eye and a steady enough hand to suck the innards out of one egg and shove them into another.
Right.
So when you start to say, well, cloning, you know, it's impossible. Well, it's not. It's not impossible. It's been going on since the 50s, and it's actually pretty easy.
Well, the whole process of giving birth in general is a type of cloning. You know, it's not an exact replica, but when you give birth to your child, it's a merging of two bloodlines, right, of DNA from a father and a mother, and merging them so that it's not an exact replica, but it's not far-fetched if we understand that whole process, you know, of insemination of an egg, you know, from a sperm, in that concept, right? So so as opposed to taking it from two different strains, how would the clone be taken from, and how would it be replicated from one? That's the real question. Would it be in terms of inseminating the egg with the same genetic information? The sperm and the egg would basically carry the same genetic information, almost like incest, but even more condensed.
Well, it could be that way. You can do that. But you could take a stem cell from anywhere and place this inside of the egg. Now, the curious thing about cloning is that within the natural birth process, you have this spark of life that comes from the mother that tells the egg it's alive, and it starts to act alive and starts to multiply. But when you're dealing with cloning, it is a shock of electricity that tells the cell that it's alive. So there is a difference there. There isn't that mother's spark in the cloning egg. It is actually electricity.
It's
that brings it.
Frankenstein, right?
Yeah.
Bringing the
exactly.
electricity to revive the creature.
Exactly. So that's the big difference between the natural birth and the stem cell birth. Now, in the early days, they were having a hard time using old adult cells to create a clone. You could only use the early fetal cells in order to create these clones. But we have now gotten to the point where they have developed the technology to be able to use adult stem cells. And Barack himself, President Obama, came forward, and I thought this was going to be big news, but I guess people didn't really understand the implications of it. But Barack Obama himself came forward and announced that he was releasing the restrictions on federal funding to stem cell research. Mm-hmm. But he added that he felt human cloning for reproduction, which left out the idea of human cloning for scientific study, was an abomination and should not be practiced in any nation. But at the same time, he opened the door by allowing now to have federal funding go into this stem cell research. People hear stem cell research and they think, well, you might be able to grow a new liver, or you might be able, right. But this is the foundation of cloning.
So you think Obama is a clone of Akhenaten then?
Let's get to that. Let's have a look at this. All right. Now, I've established the idea that Akhenaten is the go-to guy for all the secret societies, from Rosicrucians to Freemasonry. If you also understand that Akhenaten was, the carrier of all of this knowledge, the renegade, you would understand why they would bring him back out of all people. And like I say, the Hastings Institute even went forward and said this. Well, you know what? I put this picture. Let's start with Michelle, since we have her. Let's look at Akhenaten's mother, Queen T. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, Akhenaten's mother, Queen T, is a mystery as well. She was brought into the pharaonic ship at the age of 4 and was co-regent with her husband, Amenhotep III, who you can see in the Colossi of Memnon, if you want to see. They have mammoth, the biggest statues of pharaohs are of Queen T and her husband, Amenhotep III. And they gave birth to Akhenaten. Now, when you look at Queen T, I would imagine you would immediately see Michelle Obama. Now, what I did is I took Michelle Obama's high school photo and I cut it in half. And I laid these two images side by side, and you can't tell I split the photo. People are using my mixed image as an original image of Queen T, because you can't even tell her face is there. If you got that picture of her high school photo and you were to crossfade these two images, you would clearly see that they are the same person.
Well, I mean, it's it's a stretch. It's, you know, resemblance. We know resemblance occurs across culture. I mean, across time periods.
All right, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. All right. If it was one face,
it's a resemblance. I'm not gonna deny that. But I think.
Well, you got to see it split. You're looking at it. you put half of Michelle's face on that picture, and we'll get to the picture. You'll see.
Yeah.
And I would give that to you, and I would think the same thing. Now, honestly, if you want to look at the next picture, Barack Akhenaten. When I put this artwork together, I really only put Barack, his Time magazine photo, with Akhenaten, and I split again the faces in half. Now, I'll admit here live on television that I did not manipulate, squish, or do anything to make that face fit the other face. They just fit. I cut them straight in half and I put them together, and they are an exact match. So now we have two faces of a single family of Egypt and a single family that is the first family. Mm-hmm. All right? So you're looking at Akhenaten split with Barack Obama, and you're looking at Queen T split with Michelle Obama. And then I learned, lo and behold, that Akhenaten had 2 favorite daughters.
Uh-huh.
And I said, nah, this can't be. So I dug out the images of Akhenaten's 2 daughters. And I'll tell you, Malaya and Sasha have very unique facial structures compared to each other, whereas Sasha has kind of the pudgier cheeks and Malaya is a little skinnier. They are an exact match of Akhenaten's children. So now you have 4 faces that you're dealing with. Okay, so we're dealing with the fact that you can clone a mummy, that cloning has been going on since 1951, that if the secret societies in charge of our planet were going to bring back anyone in the world, it would be this man. And now we've got this mysterious man who we call Barack Obama, and I'd like to get into more of him a little bit later. Of course, he's Barry Soetoro, Barry Dunham. Nobody knows what his name is, and I predict that is
no one knows where he's born. No one knows his real identity, right?
Exactly.
He was born on Krypton.
Exactly, exactly.
And if Michelle is a man, that's another question now that's been posed.
Well, you know, the pharaohs were very manly, and Queen Hatshepsut was another one of these female pharaohs. Now, remember, Queen T was a pharaoh. Queen Hatshepsut, who also has an amazing temple that no one can explain how it was created, she would actually wear a beard so that she could stand up there as pharaoh. So these pharaonic women were very much into being manly. So I can understand when Joan Rivers comes out and says that Obama is our first gay president and that Michelle's actually a transvestite. But my theory's been running a whole lot longer, and my evidence continues to compound on itself instead of degrade.
Right. But what is the reason for Akhenaten people not being able to identify Akhenaten's body if he was a man or a woman? What is that about? The hips are too big for a man. I mean, what's your theory on this?
Well, this goes back to the ancient astronauts hypothesis, and many people, when you begin the study of ancient astronauts, you immediately come to Akhenaten. He's the first man, the king of the ancient astronauts, because he was born with a cone head, and he had this weird body that had big, wide hips, and they actually would say that he had Marfan syndrome, because he's always depicted with a cone head and with this weirdly shaped pear body. Now, the thing of it is, when Akhenaten came into power, he began the first realistic artistic period of Egypt. Prior to this, everything was very rigid and straight, but Akhenaten brought life to it, even depicting himself with his family and depicting himself as he naturally was, with a cone head and big, wide hips. And the daughters as well, when you see their depictions, are cone heads as well, with pointed Vulcan ears. Yeah, that's just the way that they were depicted.
So, given this ritual of raising Akhenaten, what is your interpretation of the reasoning behind it? You know, Obama hasn't proved to be. I mean, he may be the last president. We don't know yet, but he hasn't proved to be any kind of great leader. From any point of view, no one is at this point. No one is really a big fan of his. It seems. So, where is this ritual going?
Right now, this is where it really gets curious, because yes, I never expected much out of Barack Obama, and let's just state that they may never know that they were clones, right? And let's keep that clear as well. That a clone.
If they listen to you, they might figure it out. But yeah.
Right. I keep imagining Malaya saying, "Why do I have to be a cone head?" You know. And I think they must have seen my work. I'm pretty sure they must have seen my work. I've been spouting about this since they came to power, so I am pretty sure it's come across their desk. But you know, just like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Sixth Day, you just wouldn't even know that you were a clone. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a huge proponent for human cloning and really got into big battles with George Bush back in 2006 on over all of this. So I'm not surprised that Arnold Schwarzenegger's doing films about cloning. But Barack Obama himself, now this is where it all came in, to be very curious. Now, first of all, we live on a much stranger planet than you could possibly imagine. And the elite, these leaders, the powers that be, are way ahead of us in their technology and their understandings of the universe. Now, you can glean a lot of this off freemantv.com because I've been following the hidden agenda for quite some time, and it's mind-boggling. So when Barack Obama came into power, I actually created my first artwork of Barack Akhenaten. And to me, this, like you were saying, was just a strange coincidence. It wasn't until I found 5 other faces and one single family that I said, okay, this is too much. Because this just can't happen. I'm sorry, that much is not coincidence. If you can get 5 faces from one single family together and make them another single family, if you can do this with any other family in the world, I'll eat my hat. I have one right here, all right? I'll munch that. If you can do this to any other face out there, I'll eat that hat, I promise you. But you're talking 5 faces, all right? So that's the big key here.
Where's the fifth face?
What's
There's
that?
4 faces. Who's the 5th face?
Ah, yes, we are missing one, aren't we? And then we'll get to Barack. There was one more face. You see, Barack Obama would not be married to his wife of ancient lore. He'd be married to his mother.
Right.
Queen T was his mom. Nefertiti was his famous wife.
Oh, Beyonce.
The beauty of Nefertiti. Yeah.
Beyonce. And there has always been that rumor about Obama and Beyonce when they were in, was it France or Paris together?
That is absolutely correct. And that came out right after I announced the Nefertiti-Beyonce connection. After, right? I was before that, saying, no, if this be true, then the true wife of Barack would be Beyonce. Right. And of course, at the inaugural ball, what did she do? She came out and sang, "At last, my love has come," right?
Well, there's an interesting synergy between the overall relationship of Jay-Z and Beyonce and Obama and Michelle, and how when they're both going through like divorce rumors around the same time period, I think both men have a bisexual, if not homosexual, tendency. The women actually have similar facial structures, although Beyonce is much prettier, but there is similar facial structures. It is interesting, I must say. And obviously Jay-Z being one of his biggest proponents, Obama, from the beginning, and in a certain way laying the foundation for what Obama could achieve. Yeah. Obama was there to make you mad. That's why he's been the richest paid president. This was all a game plan to make you angry about the
this.
name Barack Obama, you've described before. It's the stone cast. What is it about the rock? The rock casteth down from heaven?
Okay. Before we jump to that, I just wanted to throw in that Beyonce singing Ave Maria inside of the pyramid with Zahi Hawass, and he called her a very stupid person. But yeah. So all those connections are there. When Barack went to Egypt with Zahi, he also found a cartouche of himself and said, look, that looks like me, right? There's Obama saying this on live television when he's looking at, and they said, no, we think you're like King Tut, which of course he looks nothing like King Tut. He looks everything like Akhenaten. Mm-hmm. And I think they were kind of hiding that fact by introducing the King Tut factor. Mm-hmm. And Jay-Z, I have suspicions that he might have been Akhenaten's replacement, who was known as Semenkar. Uh-huh. And I have yet to find a good picture of Semenkar to be able to compare the two. But, if all the rest of it be true, then Jay-Z would be Semenkar. Mm-hmm. But, okay, Barack Obama. Yes, let's get to him. Okay, the very words Barack Obama in the Hebrew language means lightning from heaven. Okay? So I was going to get to this esoteric parts of what Barack's play is, his role in this global ritual, as we're saying. Lightning from heaven is the description of Satan in the Bible. If you were to look at the Bible and it said, and Satan fell like lightning from heaven, and you read that in Aramaic, you would read, and Satan fell like Barack Obama. You can look this up in any Hebrew dictionary. I have it there on my website if you want to check it for yourself. Barack Obama means lightning from heaven, which is the description of Satan in the Bible. Now, I've never believed that Barack Obama was meant to be the Antichrist. Although, strangely enough, when Nostradamus predicted the Antichrist, he said he would be connected with Mavis. And it turns out that Barack Obama put Ray Mavis in charge of the Space Force, the United States Space Force, right?
Uh-huh.
And that all ties into this puzzle. Because when we start to look at what Obama has done and what has been going on in the 8 years that he's been around, is that we have seen the shutdown of NASA and the rise of the privatized space program and the weaponization of our current space program known as the Ares space program, which of course is the god of war. All right, so now our space shuttles are known as the Columbia Endeavor for the discovery of Atlantis, right? And Columbia is their goddess that relates back to Isis, and this is why our capital is the District of Columbia, so the Columbia for the discovery of Atlantis. When you start to put these puzzle pieces together, there's a big show going on, and Werner von Braun was one that came forward, and he told his secretary, Carol Rosen, over and over again that there were multi-universes, and that there was a major game plan going on that they were going to set up to bring about this new world order. And it would start with the Red Scare, and then it would move on to
Terrorism next.
terrorism, and then asteroids, followed by aliens, right?
As the means of militarizing space.
Yes, the Hegelian dialectic
And that prospect has been around at least since Rumsfeld and the Bush administration were pretty heavy advocates of that, of militarization of space. But as you said, the private sector being given more and more reins. I remember talking to Robert Bigelow about this when we did our Jesse Ventura conspiracy theory episode on Skinwalker. And Robert Bigelow is one of these guys who's being given a mandate to transport weapons into space as part of his private sector building of spaceports and whatnot.
Right. All right. Yeah. Well, let's. As we start to look into this puzzle and we start to realize that this was the game plan, I put together an artwork of Barack Akhenaten, Obama as Akhenaten, and I put an asteroid hurtling towards Earth and in kind of a pre-show. I like to show you what they're going to do before they do it, right? So I put this artwork together, and then a month later, or maybe even less, they announced, oh my God, there is an asteroid hurtling towards planet Earth and it will destroy all life in either 2029 or 2036. And this asteroid is known as Apophis. Now, this shocked me to death because Apophis is the serpent or Satan deity of Akhenaten's religion.
Like Typhon.
So now
yeah. But where is Apophis now? Is it its current position?
Well, they had to wait until 2013 for it to come close enough for us to determine whether it was going to end all life in 2029. Now, here's the interesting thing, is that the odds were slim from the get-go. When this became broadcast all across the news, oh my God, doomsday asteroid Apophis. Now remember, that's Akhenaten's Satan, and it comes from a group of near-Earth asteroids known as the Aten, which is Akhenaten's god, right? So we have Apophis coming in while Akhenaten or Obama, Barack Akhenaten is in power, and they have to find ways to save planet Earth from this. But the truth of it is the odds of it hitting us were slim to none from the get-go. And they knew this. It was broadcast as well, but that wasn't going to make the news, and it wasn't going to push the name Apophis out into the public. If they said, it probably won't hit us. So they made a big show out of it. And of course, this then spurred the weaponization of space and started to move the shutdown of the space shuttle system and move to the Ares war mission and the beginning of the weaponization of space.
So that's what he's meant to bring forth then. That's his major mission. Because my real question, as something that maybe I haven't seen you touch upon yet, you're pretty expert in symbolism, and I've been watching a lot of the film symbolism for the last few years in the terms of the titling of what's taking place, the alchemical process, going back to Twilight, right? That whole series. Twilight giving birth to Twilight gives birth to the Dark Knight, right? That was the era around 2000. It really peaked by 2012, where you had about 10 films with dark in the title. Dark Knight Rising, Zero Dark 30, Star Trek Into Darkness, Thor: The Dark World. I mean, you name it. It was like everywhere you looked, you were seeing dark, right? The night was coming. Then the night gives birth to then the water and the destruction of winter, let's say of winter time, right? When there's blackest night, it freezes, the earth freezes over. So you had Frozen, Winter's Tale, Captain America, Winter Soldier, right? All these wintry themes, coupled with the dual symbol of Game of Thrones and Noah. Simultaneously, the posters were coming out. Game of Thrones, All Men Must Die, with the crow, with the raven, right? The three-eyed raven with the third eye. That symbol next to the Noah, which of course, as we know, is all men must die. Literally, when the earth is completely overwhelmed by water and flooded, right? All men are killed. What's the symbol that? What's the bird that Noah releases at the end of the floods? Was traditionally the raven, because the raven would feast upon the dead bodies, and that's how they knew that they were upon dry land. So there's this water symbolism. Then we see this rise of Isis, who could be a water goddess, right? Coupled with Ice Us, the ice bucket challenge, where people are literally putting water over themselves, a ritual cleansing, right? What do you see going on? Is this giving birth to the new dawn? Does the earth have to be flooded, or the water symbolism has to take hold before the new day, the solar rising? Is that what you're, I mean, what's your take on all this symbolism?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to throw an answer out on that. I do a lot of homework on what I say and make sure that every word I state is something that you can take to the bank. So I wouldn't want to speak out on something that I hadn't really looked at, but I definitely had released a number of videos about the Dark Knight Rising and have been covering this since the death of Anna Nicole, actually. Mm-hmm. So I do have a lot of homework on this Dark Knight symbolism and how it relates to, you know, because this is a show that we should do in the future on celebrity mind control and the mark of the beast. Mm-hmm. Because it would be a really good show, and it would take me a while to give you the data that you want for that explanation, and I didn't want to get too sidetracked off of this.
Yeah, yeah. No, I just think that where we're at is a very peculiar time in history, and it's difficult to decipher, but the signs point to the idea of the new dawn, the new day, right? The new day, the new dawn symbolism, right? And they started hinting at it with films like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But that Twilight cycle, you know, the Twilight films really does give you the alchemical process in it. And so I think we're getting close to that new day. And it was just curious to know if you had an hypothesis about what that's meant to look like, or what we should be looking for.
It does, if we want to tie in the technologies to understand where they're heading and what's coming, then obviously human cloning is one of these serious indicators of what the future holds, because they're opening the doors to immortality with this, mm-hmm. because they're working towards mind transfer technologies.
Yes.
Now, there is only one corporation in the world that has the capabilities of mind transfer technologies, and that is CERN. Mm. And of course, their corporate logo is a 666 with a hyperdimensional portal. All right. Now, CERN has their LHC grid, which is their super mega computer that is capable of mind transfer technologies. I'm not saying they're using it for that, but it's the only one that's capable of pushing petabytes of information or even exabytes of information, which is necessary for mind transfer technologies into it.
Right.
Now, on the International Space Station at this very moment, we have Robonaut 2, which is a telepresence robot, which means it is ready for mind transfer connections. All right, so you could actually transfer yourself, the Russians called it transferring your soul, into this other body and then actually walk around the international, well, Robonaut doesn't have legs, but you could float around the International Space Station as this robot.
Without physically moving your body there, just through almost a telekinetic link in a way.
Exactly, through a computer mind uplink mm-hmm. into the robot.
Yeah.
Now there's another robot orbiting our planet right now that most people don't even realize it's up there. It's been up there over 600 days now, the longest running of the X-37B, which is a robotic space plane. Now the X-37B is the mini secret space shuttle. It's been launched, I think, 4 times now. I've been talking about it for about 6 years. And it's known as the Flying Twinkie, or the mini space shuttle. It is a military space shuttle, but it is a robot. There's no one on it. And it's about the size of a small pickup truck. And it's up there doing God knows what, right? Because it is a military secret operation. They can't hide the launches, so we all know that it's launched up there. They can't hide that it's up there, so they announced that it's been over 600 days that it's been orbiting, but its mission is still completely classified.
Right. Right.
Okay, so now we have telepresence robots, both robotic space planes and humanoid robots. You've got Google, who has bought the first quantum computer. They have also been buying into the mind transfer technologies, and they bought DARPA's war robots, Atlas robots and such. So now Google is ready to be Skynet, right? And I mean, it's all right there in front of us.
Yeah.
And then on the International Space Station, and this was coupled with the 2 Jesuit priest astronomers that were the head of the Vatican astronomy. Now, there were 2 heads for the Vatican astronomy that came forward and said that aliens are our space brothers and that they did not suffer original sin. And that they would baptize these aliens no matter how many tentacles they had. And this was Reverend Funes and Consolmagno. All right, both lead the heads of Vatican astronomy, right? They were then attached to CERN. As CERN was launching a device up to the International Space Station known as the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer. Now, you do have a picture of that if you care to show it. And it is just a little device on the side of the International Space Station that sees the anti-universe. Now, the anti-universe is what might be the new day, the dawn of the new day.
Right.
So if you look at the next image, the Graylator claw, that is the corporate logo of the company that built the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer, which, of course, is a reptilian claw. All right? So now you've got CERN, which was at full maximum power at the moment the Norway spiral occurred. All right? Now, the Norway spiral, from my studies, do you all know what this is?
No, tell me.
Okay, when Barack Obama was announced as given the Nobel Peace Prize, right?
In Norway, from Norway, also.
Right.
Yeah.
He showed up in Norway, and that morning, what seemed to be a massive vortex opened up in the sky over the ISCAT antenna array. Now, ISCAT is the Norway's version of HARP. Now, ISCAT has the capabilities of sending Doritos commercials to Ursa Major. We also sent The Day the Earth Stood Still to Alpha Centauri, which actually arrived at Alpha Centauri December 21st, 2012. It was simulcast when The Day the Earth Stood Still was in the theaters. It was shipped off to Alpha Centauri, and they actually got to watch The Day the Earth Stood Still, this wonderful film that you should send to every alien civilization. Right? I mean, if we're going to send any movie to a extraterrestrial civilization, would you pick Keanu Reeves in The Day the Earth Stood Still?
It's a unique choice.
No. All right, so that's the movie they sent, which said basically humans on Earth are a warmongering race and you should just send a giant robot with some nanobites and wipe us out, right? That's the movie we sent to Alpha Centauri. Okay, so this is the capabilities of the ISCAT antenna array. Doritos used it to send a commercial to Ursa Major, like I say. But yet, what happened was there was a Russian submarine there in the bay, and it launched a rocket which then emitted what appeared to be an aluminum oxide cloud, which is what made the Norway spiral blue, because aluminum oxide is the base elements of sapphires. And then this blue gas that was emitted out of this rocket was then pulsed with the ISCAT antenna array, which I think was part of the studies of punching a hole into the other dimension. Because as I say, CERN at this very moment was at full tilt. Scary, scary full tilt, right? You know, everything that CERN has done has tend to go wrong. And they could have totally caused mini black holes, opened any sorts of problems. The lead scientist at CERN said, we're opening a portal, something might come through.
Right.
Okay, so now you've got a device on the International Space Station seeing the anti-universe. You've got a device that is a massive particle collider that's able to punch a hole into this anti-universe. And then we have this aluminum oxide cloud pulsed with HARP technologies that is utilized to perhaps open a gateway into that other side. I think that might have to do more with the dark night and the dawn of the new day.
Exactly, and that's why they gave Obama the peace, what is it called, the Peace Prize, basically.
For what? What was it? For extraordinary effort or something of that nature.
The peace, maybe, you know, there's two kinds of peace, right? There's the peace of victory and there's a peace of death. In this case, who knows what it will mean for, you know, if you wipe out all of mankind, if we end up, if this anti-world, if this anti-matter, this anti-universe opens up, it may be the end of all of us, which is a different kind of peace altogether. So it's a very interesting interpretation of the new day, but I think that seems to resonate and definitely leaves us open for further discussion. Let's leave it to the future, because I think we should see what occurs in the coming months and circle back and definitely talk to you further, because you're a great guest to have and very insightful, Freeman. Thank you so much for joining us. And people can check you out at freemantv.com. Is that the best website for you?
That's the only one.
That's it. Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us. And again, we will follow up in the coming months and get some new takes on the symbolism that is ongoing and occurring down the road.
You can get a lot of this out of our new book called Weird Stuff.
Yeah.
We have Weird Stuff Part 1 and 2 are out now, and it lays this out for you in a very down-to-earth manner. It's actually designed in such a way so that you can share this with your friends easily. Everyone will understand what it's saying. We haven't gotten to this part of the puzzle in Weird Stuff yet, so it's still at the ground floor of understanding so that you can share this information. Because this is what we find that we need to do the most, is create tools for people to share this information. So
absolutely. Yeah, so cool. But they can get that through the website, right?
Yes, absolutely. freemantv.com, and also Aliens from Hell, which is this whole talk that we just gave.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll speak again. Thanks. Well, there you have it, folks. Freeman Fly is a well-researched, very intelligent man who has a lot to offer, so we urge you to go to freemantv.com to watch his videos, check out his books, and take an assessment and look for yourselves and see what is occurring, because we are at a very critical juncture. And as I said, let this not come forth the peace of the grave, but instead we need true peace on earth, being peace of life and awareness and heightened consciousness. So please be the revolution, spread the news, wake your friends and fellow humans up to the reality of what is becoming a very bleak and dangerous future. This is Sean Stone signing off.